The guard slides a form under your door and tells you to sign it. You don't read it. You've been at Crestfall Correctional for 11 years now, 9 of them in the condemned unit, and you stopped reading forms around year 3. Something about the transfer of personal property in the event of your execution. You sign it anyway. That's the thing about paperwork here. It always arrives before you're ready for it and never explains itself. You got here for shooting 2 men during a robbery that was supposed to take 4 minutes. It took 6. One of them lived. You're the reason the other one didn't. The cell is 8 feet by 10. The walls are painted a color that might have been beige once and is now the color of old teeth. There's a steel bunk bolted to the left wall, a steel toilet and sink combination bolted to the right, and a shelf about the size of a shoebox where you keep your books. The floor is smooth concrete that's cold even in summer. You've been in this specific cell for 4 years. Before that, you were in the cell 2 doors down, which was identical, until a pipe burst in the wall and they moved you. You didn't ask to stay. When you first got to Crestfall, nobody told you what death row actually costs, not in the way they tell you other things. They hand you a rule book on intake day, 47 pages, covering everything from contraband to grievance procedures. Nobody hands you a cost breakdown. You find out gradually, the way you find out most things in here. Through observation, through time. The first thing you notice is what doesn't happen. In general population 2 floors below, men work. They go to the kitchen, the laundry, the maintenance shop. They earn something called a facility wage, which amounts to between 80 cents and $1.40 a day depending on the assignment, and they spend it at the commissary on instant noodles and phone credits. You see none of that? You're in your cell 23 hours a day. The 1 hour out is in a small concrete yard about the size of a parking space, alone, under a wire ceiling. You don't work. You don't earn. The facility feeds you, clothes you, and keeps the lights on, and nobody ever sends you a bill. The meals come through a slot in the door 3 times a day. Breakfast at 5:45, which is always a carton of milk, a small brick of cornbread, and something that varies between watery oatmeal and a hard-boiled egg that's been sitting since before you woke up. Lunch at 11:10, dinner at 4:30. You eat dinner before most people eat lunch, and then you have 13 hours until breakfast. You learn to eat slowly. You get good at it. You ask a guard named Pelham once, early on, what the facility spends per day keeping you here. Pelham has been at Crestfall for 22 years and has a way of answering questions by looking at the ceiling. He tells you it's more than you'd think. He tells you the housing unit you're in requires a different staffing ratio than general population. More officers per inmate. Always someone at the desk, always someone walking the corridor. 2 at a time for any cell entry, which is protocol. You've seen it yourself. Every time they come in to search your cell, 2 guards, a third waiting outside the door. For 1 man in a room the size of a large bathroom. You stand at the slot when the tray arrives, and you think about that. The guard who delivers it doesn't make eye contact. They rarely do after the first year or so. The legal costs are the part that takes longest to understand. Your public defender explained some of it during your 3rd year of appeals. She had a stack of folders on her side of the glass, and she walked you through the process the way someone might explain a complicated bus route. The mandatory appeal, the state-level review, the federal petition, the habeas claims. Each one requires assigned counsel. The state provides it whether you want it or not, because the courts require it. You've had 4 different attorneys at this point. The current one, a man named Ortega, drives 3 hours to see you and brings his own coffee because he says the vending machine stuff gives him a headache. You've never seen the bills he files. You know they exist. There's also the housing unit itself. Crestfall's condemned block was retrofitted from a different purpose about 15 years before you arrived. Someone had to build the individual exercise yards. Someone had to install the reinforced doors with the food slots and the separate ventilation. Someone maintains it now. The ventilation in your unit makes a low hum that took you about 8 months to stop hearing. Now you only notice it when it stops, which happens maybe twice a year when they do maintenance. and the silence wakes you up faster than any sound would. Pelham retires in the spring. His replacement is a younger officer named Voss, who asks you, on her second week, how long you've been here. 11 years, you tell her. She nods. She looks like she's doing math in her head and decides not to share the result. The medical costs are something you see up close in year 7 when the man in the cell next to you, a man you know only as Garrett, starts having chest pains. The procedure at Crestfall for a medical emergency in the condemned unit involves a specific sequence. The on-call nurse first, then a determination of whether the inmate needs to be transported. If transport is required, 2 officers must accompany. A vehicle must be secured. The hospital has a separate protocol for inmates from the condemned block, a private room, a security presence, 24-hour monitoring. Garrett is gone for 9 days. He comes back looking smaller. He never says what it cost. You never ask. You're aware that you'll go through the same process someday, and you prefer not to think about the details too far in advance. The chaplain visits twice a month. He's a soft-spoken man named Father Wren, who sits in the chair on the other side of the plexiglass and asks how you're holding up without making it sound like a test. He's part of the facility's staffing structure, salaried benefits, the same as any other position here. You've had this thought before, and you've decided you don't mind. The conversations are real enough regardless of who pays for them. The appeals process grinds on. Ortega files something every 14 months or so. Most of it gets denied quickly. Some of it takes longer. During the long waits, you don't think about it. You think about other things, the specific crack in the top left corner of the ceiling above your bunk, the way the second meal always smells like the first one regardless of what's in it, the sound of the count at midnight when the guard taps the door twice, and you say your number out loud in the dark. 47. Cell 47. In year 9, a man on the other end of the block wins a reversal. You hear about it through Pelham before he retires, who mentions it the way you'd mention weather. The man had been here for 16 years. His conviction gets thrown out on procedural grounds, and he gets a new trial. Voss tells you later he was acquitted. You don't know what that means for the cost ledger. You don't know who adds it up or what column it goes in. You walk the concrete yard for your hour, and you don't think about it for a while. The food slot opens at 5:45, and the cornbread lands on the tray with a flat knock. You lift it and eat it standing up. The fluorescent light in your cell flickers twice, the way it always does in the cold months, then steadies. You set the tray back in the slot and sit on the bunk. Somewhere in some office in this building there's a running total. Every meal, every officer's shift, every transport, every attorney's filing fee, every maintenance call, every medical hour, every chaplain visit, every light that stays on all night because the lights in the condemned unit never fully go off. Someone, somewhere, knows what that number is. You've been here 11 years. You figure it's considerable.